And that's it. I think we're good to start. Hello there. Welcome. Good morning, good afternoon, good evening, depending on where you coming to us from. We're happy to have you here with us again, once again, to learn with us, to share this moment with us, to get more knowledge and share your point of view. Today, we're happy to get her, Sue from Yelp. We're going to discuss and learn a little bit more about using AI in behavioral economics to boost content and community. I'm going to invite her in a moment to start. But before that, just a quick comment. As always, you guys know, if it's not the first time you're with us, you know there's going to be people from the Birdie team managing the questions, managing the comments. So feel free to post anything you want at any moment. Question, doubts, reflection, something you are considering based on what you heard. We always get happy with seeing and getting this kind of feedback. So feel free to post. At the end of this session, we're going to have a moment for Q&A. So we're going to make sure all of your questions get answered at the end of this session. So feel free to post. We invite you, encourage you to engage with us. And without further ado, let's go. Sue, welcome. Want to introduce yourself and start?
Yeah. Hi. Thank you for the introduction. And hi, I'm Shubhansha again, and I'm really excited to be here. As Pans mentioned, I'm going to be talking about how do we use, or at least thinking about using AI and behavioral economics to boost content and community at Yelp. And before I go into the topic, just a little bit brief about me and what I do. So a little bit intro. So I have been in the tech industry for more than a decade. I actually studied to be an engineer, and I worked as an engineer for many years before I transitioned into product. Tried different spaces. As you can see, I worked with fitness space, B2B space, SaaS, and then currently I'm in consumer space, which is, to be honest, I'm most passionate about. So that's where I am. I'm currently lead product for contributions and community with Yelp. And if anyone is not familiar with what Yelp is a platform that helps people connect with local businesses. And the way we do that is by either sharing information about that business or by these content, or people share their experiences with Yelp that other people can review and make better decisions on which businesses they want to connect with. So that's a little bit about Yelp. And other than that, a little bit, as you can see here today, I do love to talk about this topic. It's something I'm passionate about. So let's dive in with what we are doing today. So I'm gonna go in. Okay, so topic just at a higher level, bird's eye view. We're gonna talk about community and content generation. I just want to touch a little bit on like why this topic is important, why we even should be thinking about this in terms of like leveraging AI, leveraging behavioral economics. And before I deep dive into the topic, I will say that you might see me using this word a lot, behavioral economics. It's just something to learn about how people react the way they do, their motivations behind the actions that they take, and kind of turning that into product design. So that's what I'm going to dive in quickly. And then the biggest difference in content is intention and action. So we'll talk about that. And then I wanted to make it a little bit more fun. So, and not just like just text. So you might see, I'll share a scenario with you, and then we can talk about how we can leverage both of these technologies for solving that friction. And then obviously, as it comes with AI and developments, like where is that line for that trust and trust when it comes to community and content? All right, so let's dive in. Just wanted to give a quick visual. I'm using these words a lot, which is content, trust building, content. What does it really mean? So if you're familiar with any platform, it doesn't have to be Yelp, any platform out there, there's a lot of content in there, which is differentiated, you can say, in two major parts. One major part is like curated content that's generated by the sponsored party. In Yelp scenario, you can say a business content. But then there's a whole other piece of user-generated content, which is literally just people in your community, your neighbors in your city, all of those people like sharing their experiences on that platform. And this is not just on Yelp, people do that on Instagram, people do it on Facebook, but the type of content that they share on each platform really matters. And why Yelp content is, or the content we're talking about today is important, is because the content in this scenario we're going for is more for trust building content. It's not for the purpose of entertainment or social or friends or following. When you're thinking about building a content that's purely for the purpose of building trust, what is that content type? Number one, we should be thinking about. And number two, when we are thinking about soliciting that kind of content, what are the things we can do to build trust? And these are some examples. Obviously, reviews, if you're familiar, is on top of it. And today we'll dive in actually more into reviews because that connects the most well with like AI and Gen AI. But there are other content types that are trust building contents that really helps build a strong community among people. And those are just more visual sides. So you can see photos, videos, more factual information like survey questions, or just like knowing that people have visited some place. And why these things are trust building content, it just gives somebody who's looking at this content more confidence that yes, this person has actually been to that business, they know what they're talking about. So that confidence in the actual authentic experience is crucial. So those are different content types. And then why do we even need this? I think I touched on this a little bit earlier, but as you see different content or communities being created, or you might see that there's oftentimes a reward, or it doesn't have to be a monetary reward, but this has to be like a tangible reward that you earn when you share your experience. On Instagram, it can be like a social proof, it can be your social brand. On let's say Google, you get some other benefits that Google provides when you give. But when you're building some content which is purely just no reward, like if I ask you to think for a moment as a person who's being asked to do something which is not really fun, let's be honest, writing a review is never fun. It takes time. It takes time away it takes time away. You have to think about it, and then you don't get really anything back. You don't get any monetary reward. You don't get anything tangible. Why would you even do it? So I think that's where we can really, really leverage the power of motivation that comes from like identifying why that user cares about or why they should care about taking that time and effort. And also, again, leveraging AI to make that job easy for them. Because isn't that the whole point of like what we're trying to do with different forms of AI? I wouldn't say just Gen AI, different forms of AI is making tasks that we don't want to do much easier. So that's why this content or this topic I find is super important and is very closely tied to the latest advancements as well. So when we talk about, so let's talk about like these, why in this scenario of content generation, what is a major problem? This is something people might have seen it. It's very common. They've seen the intention action bridge, but anyone who's not familiar, it's really a common term that we say, like intention is something that when a user is they want to take an action. In this particular scenario, we're saying they would want to write a review, right? They want to follow through. They visited a business. They had a good experience. They want to support that business. So they want to come back and write a review for them. But it's the action to point to writing a review can involve a lot of steps, a lot of time, a lot of cognitive load for the user. And then there's always this bridge or a gap between intention and the action for the user. And most of the time, at least in the content generation scenario, we found it's friction, right? And this friction can be divided into two different parts that I find, which is logistic and cognitive friction. What that really means is logistic friction can be, let's say I want to write a review, but I have no idea where do I go and write a review. Just the path of finding that business to go write a review is too hard. So I give up, I never take an action. The second is a cognitive friction, which is I know where to go write a review. It's super easy to go write a review, but I don't know why I should write a review, or I don't know what to write about, which is valuable. So that's more like a psychological block that we can say of like why you should take an action is not really clear to the user. So that intention falls through and we don't see an action. So again, that's why I'm touching. So this one we're going to deep dive into a little bit more of these like friction points of these content generation, specifically in the form of writing a review. How can we tackle it with AI? Okay, so let's take a pause here. And when you think about, you see the scenario, you see somewhere on the platform and it says, write a review. I want you to take just 5 seconds and think about how you feel when somebody says that, or you think about that for a moment. Most likely you think of these kind of things, right? Who's going to read it? I'm not good with writing. I'm not a person who writes. It's time consuming. I don't remember the details of my experience. Why should I even write? What should I write? What topic should I write about? Or out of the 20 businesses I have visited, which business should I write about? So there's a lot of questions that come in with just saying write a review. But what if we change the scenario from a platform and content generation product team perspective? How do we motivate that user in a way that these questions can be addressed? So think about this second scenario and read this line for a second. This line says, write a review for this business from your recent visit about their ambience and help other vegetarians like you. It's a very, very clear ask for the users. You're telling them for this business, why this business you should write a review for. You should share about this particular topic that would be helpful, and also giving them a motivation by saying there are other people like you, very specific, similar people like you, who will benefit from what you're writing. So if we go back, just by changing that narrative to adding these information, can be very motivating for the users to create content, to write, contribute on your platform, if you make it very specific and motivational for them. So next things are we going to dive deep into how do we get this information for the user and present it in a way that works. And before we do that, I do want to take a quick second into asking this question, because this may be coming into everyone's minds, as it did in mine as well some time ago. Why not just, if review writing is so hard, if it's so time consuming, why not just use the most popular form of GenAI to write a review for them? The user can just say, okay, these 3 bullet points, and then we generate like a, I don't know, 1,000 word review, and then give it to them and say, okay, do you want to post it? That's simple enough, right? So why don't we do it? One really, really big reason, whenever you have user generated content, trust is key. And I cannot stress that enough. Like, trust is the component that if that the experience that somebody is reading doesn't seem authentic, or doesn't seem like they actually had that experience, seems advertised, seems sponsored, seems like somebody's just somebody just wrote it, that is very, very hard to build trust in that community. So that's why using GenAI in the most popular form is not the best idea when thinking about content and community generation. But that being said, it doesn't mean we cannot use other forms of it. We can use it in different forms by giving people nudges or making it easier for them versus doing the job for them. So I think I just want to make that distinction clear, or at least how we are approaching it is, instead of just writing the whole review for them, how can we help them with small things that would help them finish their reviews? So let's start with the first one. The first one we talked about, like, I'm going to start with like targeting the logistic friction piece, and how do we use, how can we make it easier for the users? This is an example of how on Yelp users can see their experiences that they've had and what they want to write a review for. These are more machine generated models. So when people think of logistic friction, like I was talking about earlier, we usually think about, oh, let's make the UI simpler. Let's make simpler, smaller steps. But it can also be these smart suggestions, right? If you see this list, these suggestions are actually generated based on user activity. If the user has interacted with the business, and they're also very customizable too. So in this particular example, if you see this fuse, HVAC, and electrical, we're asking them for something very specific. Do you recommend this business for outlet repair? So it's a very specific service that we're asking them to recommend or not. So it's very easy for the user to answer that question. These lists are generated based on user activity, user engagement on our platform, and it is prioritized based on a user likelihood of a review. So a lot of like machine learning models goes behind kind of understanding the probability of that review. The second thing, if you say the second screenshot, if you see, is also another example of how you can reduce that logistic friction is, again, bringing these like suggestions out to the user so they don't have to go think about, like I said in the previous scenario where they have to think, which business should I go write a review for? They don't have to think about it. What service should I have to write a review for? Again, they don't have to think about it. So you're kind of making the job easier for them by leveraging ML in this idea. In the second example, it says last review 3 months ago, share yours. Again, you're giving user a very contextual information of why they should write a review. It is really direct impact from what they can write as well. So going back, finding these ways where you can reduce the path for user to think about, where should I go write content? What should I go write content for? By making smarter suggestions to the user can really, really help motivate in content generation as well. Okay, so with that example, if we go back to our scenario 2, I think we answered 2 things, right, from the scenario that we liked, which is we said you want to write a review for this particular business from your recent visit that you had 3 months ago, 2 months ago. So we kind of covered the first piece of it, and it's like the first piece of the hook where you got them into the review, they want to start writing a review, but there's still a whole block sitting where they don't know what to write, and you can still have people losing content as well. So how do we tackle the second part of this statement, which is about the ambience and help other vegetarians like you? So this is where we can use a version of AI and maybe even Gen AI as well. So think about when you're writing a review, you don't know what to write. And I would ask you to put your attention on the screenshot where there are like topics at the top. This is a very first stab at something like this, and this can become very comprehensive as we continue to build upon it. But just giving user these very simple topics to write about gives them like helps them get over the write-up block. They immediately know what dish they ordered. They immediately get a dopamine hit from like writing that dish by seeing that check mark. And then that can get them into get them going into writing about their experience. So again, and all of these like topic detection, generation, which topics are most talked about in reviews. When somebody writes about that topic, what are the similar statements that may relate to that topic? What is that content relatable to the topic? Did they delete that content? So all of these things you can really power with ChatGPT and Gen AI. Similar, this is unrelated, but similar, if you see there's like a grayed out image of like photos. So by, again, leveraging and like asking for users' permissions and like pulling their photos out of the gallery and putting it right in the review screen, again, you're reducing that cognitive load, reducing that logistic friction of like user having to go find that photo, think about when they did take that photo, and you're reducing that and putting it right in front of the user as well. So kind of doing the matching as well. So finding these small tweaks, there's more ways you can leverage it, especially for this type of content generation. So if a user is, let's say, trying to write a dish, we can populate the names of the dishes that they're writing. If they're giving a service, for example, if the service was from a handyman, we can, again, start populating these services that the user can just quickly tap and help in assist in writing a review. So those are some of the ways that in a very quick format, quick and short format that I wanted to cover on how we can leverage it in terms of like reducing friction and also being responsible by not just doing the job for the user by building these for these trusted content where we're not writing it for them, but rather assisting them in that format. And with that, that's all the content I had for today, and happy to transfer for any questions people have.
Hi, just coming back. Thank you. It was amazing. It was really insightful. We are Birdie, as a company, we are on the other side of this, consuming this feedback and finding the insights to promote actions on the company. So for you who are listening to us, I didn't mention at the beginning, but if you want to know more about Birdie, we are creating this platform to help product teams make better decisions when improving their products and their services. If you want to find out more, check in our website, birdie.ai. I think there's a lot in common with what we just heard here. As we speak, I'm checking with Dasha if the folks at the audience, if they have thoughts, if they have comments. I was thinking right at the beginning, if you could share practical examples on how to use to promote, because I think that there's a huge barrier, a huge challenge to overcome, that is convincing people to share. And I think it was really successful in this short comment and short content, because it got immediately clear how to use those. One thing immediately comes to my mind, two questions. One of them is, what is there for people that when you invite them, hey, share with other vegetarians like you, what is there for them? They are doing that because they want to feel they're contributing. What is in it that makes it work?
That's a great question, actually. So it is kind of a lot of the research or user study that actually shows that people are just more likely to take time and effort to do something when it's to help with somebody similar to them, somebody who shares interest with them. So instead of saying, let's say you go to a restaurant and you're vegetarian and there's like very less vegetarian options, you want to help other people who are similar to you so they don't have those bad experiences like you. And vegetarian is like one example. To be honest, this is more powerful when it's something more impactful, like people who have kids. Is this place kid friendly? Because they really care about other parents' experiences so that they don't want to have another bad experience of their own. So I think that's where that motivation is almost like an intrinsic motivation that really works for the user at that point.
Yeah. People are amazing, right?
Yes.
We figured that about them, and yeah, we feel like we want to contribute if you can relate with that behavior. That makes a lot of sense. The other thing I was considering, and you mentioned a couple of times, a visit or a trip you took 2 months ago or 3 months ago. Is there a sweet spot in terms of how long after the experience is the proper moment to invite them? Is it too long? They already forgot. It should be fresher on their minds.
Great question again. Honestly, based on I've tried many different scenarios and very different timing, and my learning is it's the soonest the better. Not just because, and I would even say like within a week of the time frame is the best, because not only do they remember the details, they would remember actually the things they did, how the factual information about it, but how they felt about that experience is also is still fresh. So they might be a little bit easier to motivate to write a review or generate content, versus if I ask them about like a 3-month-old experience, they probably don't remember, they don't care about it. It's such an old thing. The care is lost in that time frame. So within a week is my ideal. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
Doesn't get too long after that one. Dasha, is there anything else coming from the folks? Okay, people are shy this morning, so maybe we can think in other examples. The other thing I was thinking, based on the introduction we made, you were presenting examples on reviews and then coming on photos that made sense. But how can this come together when we're talking about survey questions and the other examples of content being generated?
Sorry, could you expand a little bit? Like, what do you mean by coming together?
I mean, one or two examples of how we use those suggestions. We're not talking about in writing reviews, but we're asking questions on surveys.
Yeah, so I think it's also different one is like different content type. So review can be a very personal experience. It's an experience that's more subjective, whereas survey questions and photos and videos, these are very factual, logistic information. I can't, like, yes, you can mess with the photo, but most likely you're going to post an original photo, you get a very real view. Survey questions are more about, is there parking in that place? Is it pet friendly? So it's a very logistic thing that can help you it's not about a person experience, but like more about the breadth of the content that you can get to share with users. So I think that's the distinction in content type. The other distinction is, no matter how much I might be talking about, we can motivate the user by reducing friction. There's a huge chunk, and I would say that's 99%, who's never going to generate content. Like, content is generated by 1% and consumed by 99% on most platforms. So those lightweight survey question type content can also be really valuable to just like get that other 99% engaged, because it's really just like tapping yes, no, it's binary, it's factual information. They don't have to think about it. So it's like another form of engagement that you can get from the users.
Yeah, it connects. I was thinking about the suggestion on surveys and differently than the reviews. If we need to get any information we're suggesting, I was just going around the concern of, won't the answers at some point starting to get really biased based on the suggestion? Is there anything popping up in this direction? People concerned that, okay, but that is not necessarily spontaneous and natural, or not yet, and trust is still there.
I find that the trust is still better. I think, but I do agree with you that there is starting to be a trend of like, you do want to see like more, like if you see these apps coming up, right? Like I can't remember the name of that app. The app that only allows you to post live stories in that moment, right? You get a notification. It is coming up. People are looking for more instant, but I would also say it really depends on the business category. So for example, Yelp is, yes, definitely known more for like restaurants, but there's a huge space of Yelp, which is like services, home services, like people redoing their houses, remodeling, contracting, roofing services. When it comes to those services, there is no alternative to trust, because you're spending so much money, you get inviting somebody in your home, right? So you need all that like detailed content. So I still find like reviews are, for those categories, reviews are not going away and there is no replacement for it. Yeah.
Okay, we need to trust other people like us. With that, I think we're good to wrap up here. So I want to thank you for the time. I want to thank you for the enlightening content. It certainly was useful and a pleasure to learn from me. I hope for all of you who joined us, it was as well. We're gonna make sure if any additional question pops up, we're gonna make it reaches you and we can reply back to the person who is here, and look forward for having another opportunity to chat with you in the future.
It sounds great. Thank you so much for inviting me. This was amazing. Thank you.
Thank you. See you in the other one.